Today for this Cabinet meeting. I'm very pleased to announce his first Cabinet meeting. I'm sure there will be many more to follow, hopefully, like that. Okay, so declarations of interest. Any Cabinet member with a disclosable pecuniary interest or a personal interest in any item on the agenda should please declare this either now or at the time of the item by first indicating they wish to speak. And I have an additional announcement on that. So anybody has anything at this stage? No, I can't see anybody. So because we now will also be discussing the council tax preset setting, I now have an additional statement on that. So I'd like to take this opportunity to remind members of a general dispensation granted by the Conduct Advisory Panel relating to the revenue budget and preset item. This dispensation enables members with a beneficial interest in land within the administrative area of the County Council to participate and vote in County Council business relating to the setting of council tax or precepts. It is therefore taken as read that all Cabinet members have declared an interest in item 7. Is that clear for everybody? Yeah. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. So we will now move to agenda item 3, confirmation of minutes held on the 13th of December. I'm not going to go through them all, but can I hopefully look towards all Cabinet members that they're happy to accept the minutes as they have been set out and agree as a correct record? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to agenda item 4, which is Chairman's announcements. I sort of hesitated on this bit really, but I'm sort of still not sure if I can actually still wish you a happy new year, but I'm going to anyway. So because it's the first Cabinet meeting of 2023, and we are in February already clearly, but I would like to start by wishing everybody a happy and a healthy new year. And that's the last time that I will say it, hopefully this year. You'll be pleased to hear. Now to some other announcements. So this relates to Claire Hobbs and the British Empire Medal. So I'd like to say many congratulations to Claire Hobbs, Hampshire County Council's manager of Wessex Dance Academy, on being awarded a British Empire Medal in the New Year's Honours for her services to young people in the county. Claire has generously accepted her award on behalf of colleagues at Wessex Dance Academy. So I'd like to thank Claire and the entire team for our excellent work they do to support vulnerable young children across Hampshire. So I'm sure we're all agreed. So that's a round of applause. So well done to Claire. So also at the end of last year, Hampshire County Council's library service became the first county-wide library network to gain the Library Service of Sanctuary Award from the City of Sanctuary, UK. The Libraries of Sanctuary Award recognises that all 40 library branches in Hampshire have met defined standards that demonstrate their inclusive and welcoming places for people who are seeking sanctuary or have recently arrived in the community. In the last year, Hampshire's libraries have played a vital role in assisting people arriving from Ukraine and their Hampshire hosts. I congratulate and thank Hampshire's library team for their fantastic work, which has been justly recognised for this prestigious national award. And I think that deserves another round of applause as well. I've just worried that we've now woken up Little Edward, but we haven't done that. Okay, so a little bit on the Levelling Up Fund. So although it was disappointing that the County Council's bid to the second round of Levelling Up Fund was unsuccessful, I was glad to see that Rushmore Borough Council was awarded £20 million to progress plans for a new leisure and cultural hub in Farnborough. The County Council was pleased to support Rushmore's bid, and we are looking forward to working with the Borough Council and local partners on the delivery of this exciting project. There's something that's been concentrating all our minds a little bit about in terms of the cold snaps we've been having and the weather and highways. So since the start of December, Hampshire have experienced a series of weather-related events that have put significant pressure on many of the services that the County Council delivers. I would like to thank all officers who have helped our residents and local communities and kept services going during such challenging conditions, but I would like to pay a special tribute to our highways teams. We have seen a series of cold wintry spells that have often been preceded by heavy rainfall, creating a perfect storm of freezing surfaces and an increase in potholes all across the road network. Despite this, Hampshire's highway staff have worked tirelessly around the clock at times and often in treacherous conditions to keep our road network safe and operational. Service demand remains high, and I know the teams continue to work flat out to keep Hampshire moving. I would like to place on record my gratitude to them all and our contractors for the fantastic job they have done and continue to do for our residents. And I'm sure Exec member through Nick Adams-King will pass that back as well to the team and genuinely thank them on behalf of all of us, certainly the Cabinet, all members and our residents. An interesting week this week, the National Apprenticeship Week. So finally, I would like to highlight that this week is National Apprenticeship Week, which is an opportunity to promote apprenticeships and celebrate the achievements of apprentices across the country. As one of the largest employers in the region, Hampshire County Council is a committed supporter of the apprenticeships agenda. Funded by our levy programme, we have created nearly 2,000 apprenticeships starts since 2017 and are delivering the largest local authority apprenticeship programme in the country. The programme performs above national benchmarks, which is a credit to the hard work of the apprentices and the support of managers across the organisation. The County Council's Apprenticeship Hub is supporting SMEs to deliver their own apprenticeship programmes, and we have made over £3 million of apprenticeship levy funding available via our transfer scheme to local employers. I am delighted that a growing proportion of young people and adults are choosing apprenticeships as a route to their future career. So that's the end of my announcements, and it's really nice to have some really positive things to announce as well, and how well certainly the County Council is doing in terms of its apprenticeships as well. Okay, thank you for that. I will now move on to agenda item 6, driving towards economic strength. And I think Gary Westbrook, Gary, if you come up, are going to take us through this paper. I would just like to say a little bit of an announcement on this. In the last 2 days, I have received a letter from the Levelling Up Minister, Dehenna Davison, setting out her interest in engaging with upper tier and unitary councils across the wider Hampshire area to discuss a potential county deal as part of the next wave of the national programme. This is really positive news, and I would like now to hand over to Gary to say a bit more about this and what it could mean for the Pan-Hampshire area. Gary, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So what you have before you, members, is the regular update report of the national and global economic picture and Hampshire's overall economic response to this. Cabinet will also be aware that we restructured the organisation from the 1st of January earlier this year, with me taking up my role as Director of 2050, and that has really catalysed a renewed focus on our 2050 and medium to long-term vision. But really, really importantly, in terms of the context of today's conversation, is recognising that important role that economic growth and prosperity plays in achieving that medium to long-term vision for our area. So under this new leadership structure, you'll see a consolidated report of a number of previous themes that have been to Cabinet around this topic area. So firstly, you'll see the economic outlook, and as is the case with these reports, they are written at a moment in time. It's fair to say that there have been some green shoots of optimism in recent weeks in terms of some of the national economic and international economic outlook. But it's really important to stress, as the report does, this is against a backdrop of still what is a significantly challenging wider economic picture, both for our region and for our national economy, and in particular the impact on residents and businesses across Hampshire. You'll then see in the paper what we then set out is 5 key strategic areas where Hampshire County Council is playing a significant leadership role in helping to navigate the challenges of this medium-term economic picture. So firstly, as the leader has indicated, through our local and national conversations around the county deal. Secondly, around the significant progress we've been making on delivering our economic strategy. Then the implementation of our strategic asset management plan that was approved recently at December Cabinet. The really important local dimension to this in terms of the place-based regeneration and growth partnerships that you'll see in the paper are now absolutely underway and are starting to be established. And then finally, that interrelated theme with the county deal in terms of the local enterprise partnership integration and how that relates to that medium-term outlook around a potential county deal. So you'll see against that backdrop of those 5 interrelated areas, there's then a series of recommendations. Firstly, noting that continued focus and emphasis on the national economic position, and that's something we continue to do in terms of that insight and data driving our future strategies and actions. Secondly, around noting the steps we're taking around those 5 interrelated themes, and particularly what we're doing around the development of the regeneration and growth partnerships and the progress around the economic strategy, where we're starting to now turn what was really ambitious strategic thinking now into delivery and action on the ground. And then finally, the continued endorsement as we stand ready, as the leader has indicated, to engage with government on the next wave of county deal negotiations and the significant impact that will potentially have across the wider Pan Hampshire area in terms of future investment, economic prosperity and growth. So that's it, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and really pleased to see this paper going forward and the progress we're making, certainly in terms of an authority, how we're joining up through the economic strategy and right across all the new directorates as well. So that's very encouraging to see that and the progress. Members, any questions? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you, Mr. Westbrook. That's a really comprehensive report. I'm going to drill straight into one of the bits of detail that I was looking at, which is energy bills and something that affects so many of us. Your report mentions the government announcement last month about removing the energy bill relief scheme for businesses from the end of March. Can I just ask exactly how will that affect the county council, please?
Thank you, Councillor Forster. I'll take the benefit of having our Section 151 officer in the room around the County Council's financial response there. So I'll do a sideways pass to Mr. Carr, please.
Thanks for that, Gary. I think we've reported at Cabinet previously that the forward buying that we do for energy rates means that we actually bought at a tariff which is lower than allows for within the relief scheme. So we weren't actually benefiting from the relief scheme, which in some sense is good, because obviously it meant we bought very low in the market. Whilst that is good news, we are still in the position, so I think for the current year we've got increased energy costs of around 7 million. And whilst we originally thought that was going to be one-off, in the numbers that we'll pick up in the next report, we have allowed for a £4 million ongoing increase in our energy bill, so still a significant amount across the County Council.
Thank you. That's encouraging to hear, and I guess all those who have been involved with our energy scheme are also seeing that benefit. Thank you.
Councillor Herron.
Leader, thank you. Thank you for the report. I think it was particularly interesting to see the update on our economic strategy. Now, you did say that the situation has slightly moved on since that report was written, as these things do, but I don't think, I think the fact that it's looking brighter is a subjective term, and I think there are real challenges ahead. So with that, you say in there that we're going to engage with partners. Can we perhaps say a little bit more about how we do that? And more importantly, how are we going to engage with the businesses that are really going to deliver on this strategy? Because many of us have interest in business outside, and we know sometimes how difficult it is to get them to engage. They're active on the day job of running their businesses. So how are we going to demonstrate to them it's in their interest to engage in this?
Thank you, Councillor Heron. It's a really, really good question, and that recognition that around the collective responsibility for delivering the ambition of the economic strategy and the wider Hampshire 2050 vision, and the role that all stakeholders need to play in it is not something the County Council cannot clearly do on its own. I think firstly, in terms of that wider stakeholder engagement, it's something we do already very effectively and have done very effectively as we've been delivering sort of almost that thought leadership aspect of the strategies that are referred to in the paper. And that's done through, the engagement through our economic development teams, have really good relationships with businesses of all sizes, right through from those almost pan-regional employers all the way down to those small and medium-sized enterprises as well. But we're also doing that through the governance that exists and the partnerships that exist, which are in a reasonably mature state across the county in terms of our role and responsibilities within the LEPs, the Chamber of Commerce, and also more recently the Freeport. I think one reflection is, as you'll see in paragraphs, I think it's about 47 and 48 of the report, that now we've published the economic strategy, and that did involve significant stakeholder engagement. In a way, that was the easy bit in terms of setting a vision and ambition for the future. And the real challenge is now, how do we engage those stakeholders, whether it's businesses or that wider stakeholder network, to really translate that strategic intent into action and activity and delivery on the ground, which is sometimes from experience a much harder and more difficult sell. And as you've said, it's the what's in it for me dynamic around that. The approach we're taking, as you'll see in the report, is there's clearly a very local dimension to that through the regeneration and growth partnerships, recognising the importance of that real place-based local leadership and local conversations, but also recognising that wider Pan-Hampshire dynamic, and a lot of the work that we've articulated in the County Deal prospectus in terms of that wider economic region. Yeah. And in terms of engaging with that business voice, it's really, really valuable, and in terms of having the ear of business and understanding from their perspective, what can we do for them? So how can we help them around things like infrastructure, really, really important agendas around skills and workforce. So business are regularly coming to us around saying we have these labour market shortages, and how as a system, with Hampshire County Council in a clear leadership role, working with our FE colleges, working with our universities, to generate those skills, both that are required now and into the future. But I think there's also part of that conversation with businesses as well. It's not just what we can do for them, it's also what they can do for us as part of that. So as part of that engagement, there's some clear asks as businesses, as major employees, and their responsibilities for driving this growth agenda as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Any further questions from any members? No? Okay. Gary, thank you for that, and a very comprehensive answer. And I think the importance of that engagement with the businesses that we are having has been fantastic recently. Ourselves and the Cabinet have been along to meet several of our larger businesses as well. We need to make sure we're engaging with our SMEs. And I know Councillor Chad as well has made that point about engaging with some of those smaller businesses to make sure they're included, and I know that's something we are doing. I think what's important for that, some of the meetings I've had with the businesses, is them understanding as an authority what we do and delivering all those other services. So the importance of that healthy, vibrant economy in helping us also deliver all those social services in those areas around there, supporting families, that's our youngsters and our adults as well, is really important. And it comes back to, I never miss an opportunity to mention where it helps to lead to having somewhere that we all want to somewhere nice to live, somewhere nice to work, and somewhere nice to play. And that's what I always come back to, and that means it engages with all our residents as well, and the importance to them. So a very extensive report, and I'm very pleased to see it as well, and a lot of detail in there. I don't have any further comments unless any other member wants to make a further comment. So can I ask, please, very happy to accept the recommendations as say page 11 and 12, that's what I'm trying to say. All agreed with that? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Gary. So we will now move on to agenda item 7, the revenue budget and precepts. And I just want to make a few points on this first, if that's okay. So in terms of the revenue budget report, So the next item is that, Rob Carr will be presenting this, but I just want to make, as I say, a few key points on this. So we've all known for some time that our financial outlook is challenging, but the growth and inflation pressures that we've faced over this last year have been unprecedented. And I'm glad that the government has listened to us and responded positively, and that in my joint letter with Kent, and if it had anything to do with that, then it clearly we've had the desired impact, and I have heard that it has via other sources as well. So I think from our point of view as the authority, actually doing something about it and joining up with Kent has made what we think is a significant difference. The extra funding and council tax flexibility are welcome, and our financial forecasts mean that we have no choice whatsoever other than to increase council tax by the maximum permissible. To suggest anything different would mean that we are not taking our financial responsibilities seriously. I do fully appreciate the impact this will have on households at this very difficult time, but I remind members that an increase is less than half the rate of inflation, and it is vital that we fulfil our responsibilities in delivering essential services to the most vulnerable people in our community, whilst also maintaining universal services that everyone expects. And that was part of my point of saying about how the importance of having a vibrant, successful economy as well. It all adds to delivering those services for residents. So I will continue to lobby government for fundamental changes to the way in which local government is funded. And as we head towards a difficult position of 2025-26, but the financial management we continue to exhibit means that we are in a stronger position than most to deal with the challenges that lay ahead. And I think it's just important to set that out at this stage before Rob presents the paper. So, Rob, over to you to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, members. As the Leader has said, we're recommending a 4.99% increase in council tax. You'll see from the financial forecast set out in the paper that we have no choice but to do that. Just turning you to paragraph 87 and the table there. So even after a 4.99% council tax increase for next year, we're still predicting a nearly £58 million gap in the budget. Just looking at that table, that's really an update from the figures that I brought to you in December. So in December, we were looking at a £51 million deficit. Since that time, we've had the local government finance settlement. So overall, that gave us a net improvement of about 10.2 million. But I also reported to you in December that we were having a look again at the T21 and SP23 savings programmes, given some of the issues that were happening across homeschool transport, older adults, those sorts of areas where we still had savings to deliver. So as a result of that work, we've taken the decision to just build back nearly £13 million worth of savings, which we're counting as undeliverable at the moment. Rest assured the work will continue on trying to deliver those, but we think it's prudent at the moment just to reflect that in the forecast. You'll also see a line there. So in the December report, I brought an awful lot of changes to you in terms of adding money in for growth pressures and inflation. But another one has come to light, so around special educational needs and educational psychologists. So we were aware of that at the time, but we were funding those pressures from temporary money, pending some changes coming in from government in terms of potential legislative changes. Those look like they are still some way off. So we thought it was, again, prudent to address the structural deficit in those budgets by adding £3.8 million to the budget going forward. So overall, that brings us to a net gap overall of 57.7 million. Having said that, just refer you to paragraphs 85 and 86. So normally by this time, in previous years, we would have all of the information from districts around their collection fund surpluses or deficits for both the council tax and business rates. Post-COVID, that's got a lot more complicated. and also this year for business rates, we had a revaluation year. So it's been very complex for the districts to pull those numbers together. So as part of this report, you will see that we assumed a balanced position. That was based on the fact that we did expect to have around a £4 million council tax collection fund surplus, but it was looking like some of the early numbers that we were getting from districts was that business rates would be a significant deficit. So overall, we've allowed for a net neutral position. As it turns out, those early figures that we had for business rates were overly prudent, and the numbers that have now come through mean that not only have we got the surplus of 4 million on the council tax, but also something similar for business rates as well, about an extra 3 million. So that's 7 million extra from that. And then only yesterday the government announced the final local government settlement, and as part of that we received an extra £1 million worth of grant on a one-off basis. So all of that is one-off, but effectively we're £8 million better off than that table suggests. So my suggestion would be that we would transfer that to the budget bridging reserve to try and bump that up as far as possible. But I think we'd also take the opportunity to increase the investment risk reserve, which I refer to in paragraph 102. So the fact that we're increasing the level of our higher yielding investments, to keep pace with that, we probably need to also increase the investment risk reserve. So that will come to you in the Part 1 report that comes to County Council, and we'll spell that out for you as recommendations. The only other main area that I wanted to draw to your attention, Leader, was paragraph 116. So when we came to you in December, we were looking at a significant deficit in the position to 25-26. Obviously, the autumn statement that we got from the government gave us some additional resources, but we didn't know what the impact of that would be in 24-25. The provisional settlement has given us some figures around that. Just draw your attention to the table in 116. So there are 3 lines there: the extra 2% council tax per annum, the additional business rates income, and additional social care grant. Those are all over 2 years, 3 years for the council tax. So that gives us extra resources of 103 million in total, which brings our predicted deficit to 25-26 down to 132 million. Whilst that is good news compared to what we were facing before, I would make the point that is still the second highest budget gap we've ever had since 2010. And obviously we've already taken £640 million out of the budget up to SP23. So our ability to be able to close that gap is now severely limited. The corporate management team have doing some high-level work on what sort of options might we be able to bring forward in order to close that gap. Based on that sort of high-level work, as it sets out in paragraph 120, we think that the potential top end of savings is probably only about £100 million. So we are short on closing the budget by the time we get to 25-26. Clearly, this is linked to something we've been telling the government for many, many years in terms of the funding for the growth in social care. And obviously that's been exacerbated over this year by the inflationary pressures that we've faced as well. So it's really important that we continue with our lobbying activity and to lobby the government as we lead up to the spending review, which we expect to be in summer 2024, so that the new spending review period from 25-26 brings about those fundamental changes to local government finance that have been promised for some time. Happy to take any questions, Leader.
Rob, thank you very much, and that's why I wanted to just make those points at the beginning, and also just to say, I don't know if it's congratulations on the amount of work that's gone into that. I know it's a detail for you and the whole team, because the ground does shift every now and again, and we have to go back and really look at everything else as well. But it's an enormous amount of work that's gone in to this, and the support and everything that you've given us, and that relationship, that working together. You know, we've got to a stage now, I think, where government are listening to us and we've got an impact, but we've still got a long way to go as well. Members' questions, I think. Russell, did you have a question, I think? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So the 2025 budget gap that you were just talking about, Rob, of 132 million, it's an important figure for all of us because it obviously affects how we approach our own revenue budget decisions, but it also is a figure we use in our lobbying when we have those discussions with MPs. And I'm conscious that figure's changed a bit over the last year. And we all appreciate the difficulty of making forecasts in this environment. But I do want to ask the question of how confident can we be in that figure, the 132 million? In a best case scenario, how far can it come down? In a worst case scenario, can it go up? And if so, by how much?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, so part of the problem that local government have had for some time is the fact that we've not had surety of funding over a long period. So I think the last full 4-year spending review that we had was back in 2016-17, and then since then we've been having single years or, as we've got this time round, 2 years. So on that side of things, the fact that we've got figures through to 24-25 is promising from a government point of view. On the other side of things, in terms of forecasting pressures and growth, I have to say, not particularly confident at all. I think if you look at the last year, we have seen an unprecedented position where inflation, growth in adults, workforce pressures have just been nothing like we've ever seen before. So whilst we do quite a lot of work, particularly in the social care area, of predicting our pressures going forward, what you've seen, I think, in the December report, just a few extra clients during the year then has a 4-year impact the year after, and those can easily add 10-15 million pounds to the position. So we've got some surety around the government figures, although we don't have figures for 25-26, but I'd certainly say the period that we're in at the moment, trying to predict what that growth and pressures will be, or what the next potential financial crisis could be, is very difficult, but it's our best guess at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. And I think Councillor Applewhite just demonstrates the pressures that there are in certain areas, and that's what I was trying to explain, how that can vary greatly over a very short period of time, as we were saying. Any further questions? Councillor Heron?
Chair, it's a comment really. I think it just picks up on the comment that Rob just made, and I think it's important to highlight the work that our officers are doing, particularly in this case in children's services. It is that growth in demand that is one of the great unknowns, and we are seeing considerable increases for a variety of reasons in the number of referrals that are coming through to this council in respect of children's safeguarding. And obviously we look at each of those, but I think it's the next step in that I think is so important, and it's important for 2 reasons. We have done an awful lot of work, and as I'm learning as new to this role, pioneering work on how we can best safely keep a child with their family. And when we look at some of our neighbouring authorities, you are seeing that as that referral rate is going up, so at a considerable rate are the number of children that are coming into local authority care. And it's important to say that the work and the investment that we have put in up front has enabled us to look at a different model, to intervene earlier, and to work to keep those children wherever we can do safely in their families or with their extended family. And I think the reason I say that, Leader, is it's twofold. It's one is actually evidence shows that is the best outcome for the child, and that is always our number one priority. But I think the other thing that it's important to say is actually it is a significant cost saving if we can do that, and that allows us to have the resources to maintain our outstanding service. So I wanted to really just share that, because I think it's important to show that we are doing work to both improve outcomes and to manage those up-pressure costs. And also, Leader, it allows me to make, if I may, one last comment. We're only able to do that because we have the resources to invest in services, and this is back to our message with government. If you leave it so late to assist us and talk to us, actually you'll get us into a position where we can't help ourselves to the same extent. You'll get us into a position where we can't deliver the better outcomes, and actually you'll probably get us into a position where it's going to cost more nationally. So I think it's a really good example of what we're doing to manage the pressures, a really good example of how we can get better outcomes for our residents, and a really good warning that actually, if there's an issue coming, get on and face it as soon as you can.
Really good points, Councillor Heron, and we've seen evidence of that recently with several other authorities as well, so very valid and very relevant at the moment, so thank you for that. Councillor Forster.
Thanks, Leader. I'll just drive straight in, Rob. You like my questions. The budget bridging reserve, I seem to have borrowed someone else's teeth today, is really only enough to cover the gap next year. Do you think we'll be okay for 24-25? And where are we for 25-26? And that obviously takes into account your comments earlier on and the previous questions, the 8 million extra funding, etc. But I'm interested in where are we really likely to end up, please?
So we will take the opportunity for everything that we get, we will put into the budget bridging reserve. So you'll have seen that throughout the December report and the latest report. So we are consciously making sure that we're building that up as far as possible. What we'll also do at the end of this financial year is do a review of reserves to have a look to see if there's anything that we can free up in terms that's been uncommitted or not used over a number of years. And again, we will put that into the budget bridging reserve. After that, if we're still in a position that we still can't meet the 24-25 deficit, then we will again need to look at, well, what other reserves have we got that we could transfer there in temporarily in order to bridge the gap. I mean, in some respects, the good position that we're in is we have that flexibility because we have a significant amount of reserves. Some county councils are down to £50 million worth of reserves. They just don't have the flexibility to do that. So our size, our capacity gives us that flexibility. So in the Section 25 report, which I have to write in, I think it's Appendix 6, that talks about the adequacy of reserves, and there's quite a bit in there about am I comfortable that we'll be able to get through to 25-26 in order to try and deal with the budget by that time, and yes, I am, basically.
Okay, any further questions from members? No. Rob, so I just want to say, I mean, some really good points made from several members there in terms of that. And we're in this position because the prudent way we have been managing our finances over many, many years. And lots of authorities don't have that. And I made the point that Councillor Edward Heron made about, don't wait for that to happen for that. It has happened to some. But because of what we've done, we are able to, if you like, flex that at the moment, despite those demand pressures in children and adults, as well as actually highways as well at the moment, and we've heard earlier about in terms of the weather events as well. So, as I say, I think we have made our points. I made that very clearly about the whole system needs reviewing, and hopefully that message has been taken on board, and we can start to see change in that and how what we've been doing, and the good work that we've been doing. So I don't have any further questions if any other member doesn't. So Rob, thank you very much. And I just ask happy to accept the recommendations as set out on page 30 and 31. Agreed? Okay, thank you very much. It's okay. Okay, thank you, Rob. We will now move on to agenda item 8, which is the capital programme. And I'll just, the same as before, just make a few comments and then Rob, you introduce the paper then please, thank you. So some of this is relevant to the previous discussion as well. So despite the financial challenges that we face on the revenue budget, this council has continued to invest in assets and infrastructure. And I was pleased to see that we're putting forward a total capital programme of over £1.2 billion when we include schemes that are already underway, and it's important to say that. Not only is this a major investment in Hampshire as a place, but it will also provide a huge boost to the local economy through jobs and construction. And we've mentioned several times about the importance of business and a healthy, vibrant business as well. And infrastructure is a key part of that. So similar to the revenue budget, we've faced challenges from rising inflation impacting on our cost estimates. And there are a number of requests for increases to existing schemes. But we had foreseen this issue and set aside £15 million of funding as an inflation underwrite to ensure that these vital schemes can progress. Once again, underlining the strong financial management grip that we have in this council. So Rob, I now ask you to present the paper, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Stolen most of my thunder. So this is
Okay.
a general update report. So obviously we update the capital programme every year at this time. Certainly less complex than the revenue report, and as the leader has pointed out, the key issue really for us, as you'll see in the recommendations, is that there are a number of requests for additional funding in order to allow schemes to continue to progress. But we put that inflation underwrite in place last year, which is positive. So what we don't know is whether or not that will continue to be an issue for us, but we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll do it on a scheme-by-scheme basis as they come forward for approval. But happy to take any questions.
Okay, so it sort of makes the point again, we're only able to do that because we foresaw that and put that money aside, and we're in a position where we can do that, so those schemes can progress. Members, any questions? Councillor Chad.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Rob, for the report. I note that there's no capital programme for 3 of the new directorates. Is there a reason for that? And can you explain, please?
Yep, something that I noticed myself actually. So I think in the diagram for the new structure, you will see that you've got the delivery services in the middle, and then you've got, as Gary termed it, he's gone, 3 horizontal directorates that go across all 3. So that's my directorate, People and Organisation, and Hampshire 2050, and it's because they're more strategic, because they're enabling functions, they don't get involved in direct delivery. That's why we don't have any capital programmes, so that's invested in children's, adults and universal services.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Luke Adams-King.
Rob, thanks. As the recipient, I think, of much of it, we've used 10 million of the 15 million pounds that we'd set aside to underwrite inflationary pressures. And my question, I guess, is: are we expecting much more? And if that happens, what happens if we exceed the 15 million pounds?
Good question.
So it is likely we will see more inflationary increases, and we'll deal with those as they come up. I think what we'll do as well, so is this Stuart Jarvis's idea, is actually create a capital inflation risk reserve, not just for now, but going forward. So again, as part of that review that I mentioned of reserves for year end, if we can put some money into that capital inflation risk reserve, we will. Not only is it important to deal with the inflationary increases we've got now, but also when we bid for government money, in signing up to receiving that funding, they normally expect us to underwrite any cost overruns, which whilst that does bring risk to us, the fact that we may be getting 10 or 12 million pound toward a 15 million pound project, it's still worth it for us. And what that capital risk reserve would do is it give us that ability to draw that down should we need to. So we'll look at that again at the year end.
Right. Thank you. That's really helpful, and I think that makes a lot of sense. The one thing I would say is that looking at the various projects for which we have to dip into the reserve, most of which are construction projects, and particularly the highway ones, the construction inflation has been running at around 20 to 25%, and actually the fact that we're not having to increase our budgets by that much is testament to the hard work of our teams in keeping the costs down as much as they possibly can. So hopefully it'll be a less important issue going forward, but it's certainly one for this year. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions from members? No. So just sort of build on that a little bit, Rob. So, I mean, absolutely understand about having that reserve built in for that. We are able to do it this time, but what's important, I think, not only are we able to continue to that, I mean, from a public's point of view about, being able to continue with those schemes, because it's not a place you want to be where you can't. Maybe there is a review of the capital programme at some point in terms of that. I think that's something that will have to happen despite that reserve, and we'd expect to do that anyway. I think that's a normal thing that you would do. So thank you for that, and thank you for the report. So if no further questions, okay, so happy to If you are to accept the recommendations on page 143 and 144. Happy to accept the recommendations? Great, lovely. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Rob. Okay, so we'll now move on to agenda item 9, Serving Hampshire 22-23 half-year performance report. And I think, Jack, you are going to present the report. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you. So you have in your pack the normal half-year performance report, which monitors our performance against the Serving Hampshire strategic plan. The report is for noting, and there's no specific decisions to be made. The report makes reference to the sort of challenging context in which we find ourselves, namely around inflation challenges and also around staffing pressures that are linked to our local labour markets. Included in the paper, you have reference to performance around inclusion and diversity and climate change, although I note that they come separately to Cabinet. And then in terms of the report itself, by way of brief summary, it reflects continued delivery against our objectives, with most of the corporate performance measures showing improvement through the year, and more than half are meeting their targets. Specifically, it talks to 19 of the 21 performance measures being considered low risk, and then the remaining 2 being considered as medium risk. Both those medium risk measures have mitigating plans in place within their directorates, which are being monitored respectively. But overall, the report reflects the continued commitment and performance of our staff and those we work in partnership with. Happy to take any questions.
Jack, thank you very much. I'll just say, considering all the pressures and all the issues that everybody else has been going through, not only us as authority, but people in their personal lives as well. So I think it's an incredible report, really, to get to this stage that we can deliver what that has been successfully done. Any questions from members? Right. Councillor Heron, yes?
Yes, sorry.
Threw me there.
Yes, I know. With the majority of the performance risk being reported as, the risk being low performance risk, are officers confident that performance measures are fully understood and the impact of potentially not meeting the targets are being considered at the level, and I mean, here, I suppose, within the organisation and within the new directorates?
Yeah. So we've got a mechanism by which the directors will monitor performance and rate that performance in terms of both how we are delivering against the target, but also in terms of the risk and implications of not delivering that target. So the low speaks to performance risk, whereby the impact on services or residents would be less, and then medium, obviously, we anticipate there would be some impact on services, etc. And the monitoring of those performance measures is undertaken within the directorates in more detail than we include in this report, but I think directors would say they're confident that they're cited and are managing those risks, and we've transitioned performance measures and risks between directorates as we've restructured to ensure continuity of performance delivery.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Fairhurst.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask what's been done to mitigate the concerns around recruitment and retention?
Yes, you can. There's quite a lot ongoing in that space, as you might expect. Some of which is being led within our directorates, where it's very specific in relation to particular professions for whom we've got large cohorts of staff, where we monitor and oversee and seek to ensure we have a consistent level of retention in those areas, so social work, for example. And then also at a kind of corporate level, we have a strategic workforce board where we look at what are the current correlated impacts of the recruitment and retention challenges, and what's our kind of corporate response to add to that which directors are already overseeing in terms of their very specific service impact issues. So we are actively considering things like what are the steps that we can take to ensure that our reward mechanisms remain competitive. So there's obviously we look at salaries on a regular basis, but actually things like, you know, recruitment retention allowances, market supplements, are those things necessary and pertinent? So we're benchmarking and making decisions around those things. But we also look more holistically, so what is what we would call our employee value proposition? What makes Hampshire County Council a great place to work? How do we sell those benefits of working in an organisation like this? Things like our flexible working policy and those other kind of in many ways secondary, but actually they make this an organisation that people want to come and invest some time in their career in. So there's a lot of ongoing activity, both kind of practical and I would say strategic, but also in the kind of staff engagement and wider labour market engagement space to ensure that we can keep on top of the challenges that we're facing.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Liz. Any further questions? Councillor Oppenheimer.
Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you for the report, Jack. I think it's excellent and really helpful to have all these things brought together.
Yep.
I agree that one of the performance highlights that you've mentioned there in paragraph 22 was the launch of the Keep Warm, Keep Well scheme, which is really so important with the cold snaps we're facing and the cost of living crisis. And it's really good to see the Keep Warm, Keep Well banner is right at the top of our website at the moment, so people can find it really easily. I'd just be interested to ask how it is complementary with the Hitting the Cold Spots initiative that I understand is still going on and sits underneath that banner. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. So the Keep Warm, Keep Well initiative is kind of a banner campaign, if you like, a broad campaign, which encompasses and signposts to various other initiatives that are in place and is specifically about supporting residents of Hampshire through in times of the cost of living crisis, essentially. So it is signposting to the Hitting the Cold Spots campaign, to the warm spaces work that we're doing, to food banks, community spaces, holiday clubs, health and wellbeing initiatives, etc., all in support of our residents through what might be challenging times. The Hitting the Cold Spots is a campaign which is more specific to energy and is about advice and signposting around advice to residents around energy provision. So it's much more specific. So the two are complementary of each other and different to each other, not duplicative.
Thanks very much for that. That's really clear, and I will explain that in due course to residents in my division, and they'll be very pleased. Thank you.
No, Russell. Thanks, Jack. Any further questions from members now? So, Jack, just to say, I think quite often look at these reports, and it's very easy to just look at them, but as Russell has already said, Councillor Pioneer, to actually put it all together and to see the amount of work that goes on and the delivery of it at such a high quality as well. So also well done, that's to everybody. I know you didn't do that all on your own, Jack, but some of it, but well done on the bit you did. But in terms of your team and putting the report together, so thank you for that, and it's genuinely appreciated the work that officers do in delivering all this, so thank you very much. So no further questions. Happy to hopefully to accept the recommendations as set out on page 193. Are we agreed? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. So we will now move on to agenda item 10, constitutional update. And I think Barbara Bidwell is going to present the report. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Leader. A short report. It proposes two changes to the Constitution. The first change is that standing orders are amended so as to enable officers to answer technical questions on reports at full council. This would be at the discretion of the Leader or the member presenting the report with the permission of the Chairman. It's considered that the provision would be used quite sparingly, but it would be useful in certain circumstances. For example, technical questions on the budget report. Members presenting reports will, of course, otherwise continue to answer questions on reports and speak in answer to the debate. As outlined in the report, members are reminded that if they have any detailed questions of officers on any section of the report, then they should continue to ask these in advance of the meeting.
Yeah.
And attached to Appendix 1 is a draft revised Standing Order 13, reflecting the proposed new procedure. The other matter in the report is simply an update to the terms of reference of the Health and Wellbeing Board to take account of the new responsibilities of the board in consequence of the establishment of the joint Hampshire Health and Social Care Board. Members, as both proposals require amendment to the Constitution, Cabinet's asked to recommend the changes to full council, and this would be by way of a Part 1 report to this month's council meeting.
Okay. Barbara, thank you very much. Any members, any questions? Councillor Warwick.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Barbara, for this report. And I think it makes a lot of sense to allow the provision of a response to a technical question from a member. And you confirmed that executive members or chairman of committee will continue to answer members' questions as normal unless they are technical. But I've got a sort of further question that I picked up in Appendix 2, where you're talking about debate around paragraphs of report. So that suggests that potentially we could have debate on every single paragraph through a report. And would there be a time limit set on that debate? Not wanting to put that suggestion in anyone's mind, but that looked quite interesting to me. That's Appendix 2, paragraphs 13.2 and 13.3.
In answer to the first question, it will be purely on technical questions. It's really to enable council to get more information at a council meeting in certain circumstances. The overwhelming majority of questions will continue to be asked by members, and it will be at the discretion of the executive member or cabinet, chairman, committee chairman, presenting the report. So far as your second question goes, Appendix 2 is the standing order as it is now. I've taken the liberty of tidying it up. There's no substantial changes to it. Appendix 1 is the standing order which we're proposing for the meeting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Any further questions for anybody? Councillor Heron.
Yeah, just a comment, because I think it's... I can understand why there is a certain nervousness of this, but I'm absolutely sure that the chairman of the council, the new leader, will be rigorous on making sure that this is really for allowing technical answers. But then equally in my time, I can remember times when the council chamber has got itself a bit torn up on what was the actual, figure or date or something really minor, but it was there, and you could see the officer down below us desperately wanting to say. So actually, I'm sure that this will be, the proof of this will be in how it is used, and I'm confident that it will be used appropriately, or we will be back here. But actually, I think this is a really useful change to allow all members in a debate, when there's a point of detail, to be able to have the facts straight in front of them, not to need to adjourn, to actually give the information to members. So I think this is actually a positive step in giving us the tools we need to make the decisions, Leader.
Thank you for doing my summing up, Edward, on that. That was absolutely excellent. But I wish I should do it anyway, as you know. So thank you, Barbara. I think it's really important to that, Barbara. The thing you mentioned was there's an opportunity for any member at any time to ask an officer prior to the meeting, and I think that's really important. But what this does do, as Edward has said, through the course of a debate, if a question that comes up that is of a technical nature, to aid the sort of the flow of the meeting, so we don't stop or go back or have to come back with something written afterwards. It's much easier if it's just a detailed technical question to answer it there and then. And Edward's quite right, I've seen that as well. You've seen officers saying, if we could just say this, that would just clear all this up there and then. So that's why this is being done. It's not, we don't want a situation where it's default position that members continually ask officers to answer this. This is only in really exceptional circumstances where there's a requirement just to do that technical bit of advice in that moment in time. And you're quite right, I certainly will, the chairman will be making sure that this isn't abused, it's only used for that purpose as well. So thank you for making that point, Edward. I don't have any further questions for anybody else. Barbara, thank you very much, really appreciate that. So hopefully, accepting that it has to go to council for this as well, that the recommendations are set out on page 221 and 222. We agreed with the recommendations. Okay, thank you very much. So we will now bring the meeting to a close. So can I ask that the recording is now stopped, please, and you confirm when that has been done, please? Thank you.